Perspective.
Hey. This is your host, Vontae Swank, and you are now experiencing the Perspective Junkies podcast.
Junkies.
On last week's episode, we had Joe Swank, our first guest, and we discussed toxicity and things we liked and disliked within relationships. We had such a good conversation that we wanted to continue it on, but with the female perspective. So this week, we have on Tanisha, and she gives her feedback on toxicity and holding women accountable. She's holding men accountable as well. So, as usual, please like, subscribe, show us love wherever we can take it. And most importantly, enjoy.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned into Perspective Junkies. I am your host, Cody Swank, aka Captain Controversy. I'm joined by my co-host,
Vontae Swank, man of mental health.
And we are joined by a special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Tanisha, Femi Fatale on Twitter.
Say a little something about yourself, like what do you do, what interests you, brought you to the show?
Well, what interests me, you hit me up and asked me what I like to be interviewed. I gave your podcast a listen, and y'all talk about some controversial stuff and stuff that gets a lot of people into arguments on Twitter. So that was really the main reason.
Okay.
Because I like my controversy there.
That's just a little note to the crowd that Captain Controversy is doing his job.
Right.
He's doing his job, bringing them in.
He's
Okay.
got the Captain Cape on, big fella.
We we usually have Kenzie. KB knows most, but he's handling a little business, so
Hard working man.
he'll be joining us soon. Responsible fella. But okay, a Twitter moment is something we do that's just bringing up some things we saw on Twitter that we thought were kind of interesting or significant or noteworthy. So we'll comment on it, get your observation. We did this one before, but we didn't have a woman's opinion on board, so we want to get what you think. Millennial women are carefully stumbling through the journey of wanting kids, but not a toxic and unbalanced relationship. I hope we perfect it so Generation Z is smooth sailing. What do you think about that?
Sometimes I don't really understand that side of it, because I feel like women can want kids without dealing with an unstable relationship and without dealing with toxicity. And I think that's become so normalized that people think that in order to have a relationship, that has to come with it.
Okay.
And that's just a part of the journey. And it shouldn't have to be that way. And it's honestly not that way if you're dating the right people.
Okay. And what would you define as toxic? Something that with this you cannot maintain a relationship.
Toxic to me is really just when the relationship starts to consume you in a way that does not serve you positively. Like if you're constantly in a bad mood, if you're constantly stressed out, you're in a toxic environment. If you're constantly at odds with the person you're dating, or it's just a struggle within the relationship, that's just kind of toxic to me. Anything that doesn't promote growth, you shouldn't be in it. And I think people believe that toxicity and dealing with those unbalances in the relationship is just a part of it. I don't know if it's because of what they've seen or what they've just experienced themselves within their own relationships in the past, but that's just not something that should be a part of dating, and it shouldn't be normalized within relationships at all.
Mate?
Well, this was the interesting part of our discussion last week, was defining toxic, and I think that was a great definition that you offered.
Yeah, way mature than what we came up with.
It was like, toxic, that's normal.
Toxic. Bruh, you need it. I felt real stupid when she said that. I was like, yeah.
I believe it's because we've overused the word toxic, and now it's getting tough to identify, the true definition of like what are we all going by with that word. And so that was the conflict that we had last week on like deciding what that was, and it was also on the word balanced. And what do you think that she meant by like balance? Do you mean like, it's equal all across the board, or what do you feel like she meant by that?
I think what she meant by an unbalanced relationship is just not having emotional stability within the relationship. That's the first thing that I thought of when I read that. Not having that emotional stability, constantly being at odds, not having effective communication. Like those things alone, communication alone makes or break a relationship. And if y'all have poor communication, you're constantly going to struggle within your relationship when y'all discuss anything, especially when you discuss things that make each other upset. So I think that's what she meant. That's what I got out of unbalanced.
See, that was a good interpretation of it. Well, I feel like how I interpreted it was, and I think a lot of dudes interpret it, is that the unbalanced, as in the actual task or the actual responsibilities within a relationship. And to me, and I think most guys agree, it's like it's never even come across in my mind that we're trying to truly make it we're doing the same. In order for you to do your equal place, or your equal, bring your equal share to the table of relationship, you would be doing things that I don't do well, or you know what I'm saying, or that men are not expected to do. Like, and I think that's just being conflated with you're sexist. No, it's just that I am assuming that there's certain things that you would prefer I can handle. Like in an ideal relationship, many women would prefer if he can handle the financial stuff. That's like to me that's a significant thing. That's like kind of like they're swept under the rug. Like we want you to do that, but we want it to be equal. Like you ain't been cooking the same as me. Like, I'm like, what is it that you want? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there has to be some type of you're doing this more and I'm doing this less. I'm doing this more. You're doing this less, to be a realistic idea. And I think when people say unbalanced, we're like, it's not going to be. Are we striving for balance in individual things or balance outcome? Like together we both bring a lot to the table, and we know what the other person should do and the other person knows what I should do. Like, so I think that's why we took that, we respond a different way. But your interpretation makes sense, that you could more so just be saying like communication or what each person, even then I'm like, I don't know, because sorry if I'm going on a rant for a minute, but like a woman may want for a man to be able to like, I vent to you and you know what I'm saying, someone that I can talk to a lot. Whereas a man maybe, I want you to be in peace with you. Like we're calm together. You know what I'm saying? Like you may want a man who's not necessarily as always like I'm breaking down, like everything's going wrong. Like you may want a more, and then a man may not hold that against you if you are actually feeling a lot of emotion. So it's like even in communication or even in emotional expectations, I don't know if it's necessarily has to be balanced, but just we know what each other's roles are, and that doesn't come up as balance to some people in today's eyes. That they want it to literally be we play the same role, and that's what I'm like. So what would you say to that?
I don't feel like I feel like when it comes to relationships and comes like that balance that you're referring to, like the men picking up the finances and she would have to do a little extra. Not have to. I'm not gonna say that. She don't have to do a little extra, but something to meet you in the middle. And I honestly don't think that people don't strive for that type of balance. Like a lot of people in relationships want to take nowadays. What I see, they want to take, they want to get something out of it, but they don't necessarily want to meet in the middle some way, shape, or form. Right. Like me and my boyfriend talk all the time about when we get married, I always tell him I'm not paying rent, I'm not paying mortgage, but I will pay for utilities, I will pay for groceries. Like, I'm gonna do my part. I'm not touching that mortgage. But like, it's all about having some type of balance and meeting him in the middle that's comfortable for us. Right. And it's really just about knowing your partner and knowing what's comfortable for them. And honestly, I don't think people like to explore that part of their relationship.
I mean, I would agree with that. And I also feel like it can go to show that some people really don't know themselves that well, and they don't understand what they're exactly bringing to the table. Like they kind of reflect on the good things, like I'm doing this for you, I'm doing that, or whatever, but they don't really understand themselves and the emotional baggage that they're also bringing within the relationship, that it's something to work through. And so like when we say a balance and bringing things to the table, you got to understand the negative things that you're also bringing to the table, and in order to be more understanding for what your partner is also bringing, like their emotional baggage. Like some people are not reflecting in within themselves, and they're acting like they can't deal with what somebody else has going on. And so I think it's like knowing your partner, but also knowing what you are and who you are within your emotions and everything like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But she offered like that's why we need girls on here to offer
a different perspective.
Exactly. So the next Twitter moment is, this is the tweet. Refusing to settle as a woman looks totally different than a man refusing to settle, in my opinion. A man refuses to settle and his dating traffic may slow down. A woman refuses to settle and her dating traffic stops, halts in its tracks. Change my mind.
You should be the first one to apply that. Switch up
I feel like that's been like a big debate about, like the word has been that men will just settle for the woman that's there, or women are wanting to be in relationships so much that they'll take what they can get. And I'm not gonna say that it's completely false, because that would be me being ignorant to how some people really move. And I would say that society today will settle for a cute looking relationship. Like, if it looks good on Instagram, they'll settle for that and believe that they have to work through what could be toxic. And so, that's my initial opinion on that tweet. Like, you got something for that?
For me, I took it a whole different way. I was more so looking at it questioning what your standards of settling are.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is what it's really shedding light on, even though I know she wasn't really trying to say that. If you have a standard, or you have a system where this expectation yields nobody wins, like there is no men left standing that fulfill all your needs, that means that whatever you bring to the table doesn't match the standards you bring. And I think sometimes in this no settling, era, people forget that when you don't settle, now you're in a competition like a candidate to win like a game show. You really have to compete. So if you're gonna make that you settle, hey, I want them to be super attractive, super tall, super fit, this amount of bread. Now you're competing with a class of women that is likely outmatching you in different markets. Like, if you want a person that's super attractive, you're competing against the women that are super attractive. There's nobody who is standing, at your level that's getting the type of men you want. Or if you want a man past this amount of income, or if you want a man with this type of demeanor, like you're never valued by the group that you want. Whereas I think if you say that men have that when they don't settle, there's still a few women, that means that the standard is right. You're not supposed to have 100 options. Like, you don't preferably want that. Whatever your standard is, it should get it to like, all right, now only 10 could even be the option for me because I have a certain standard. But if it's like my standard is like, this girl gotta have no waist, no credit problems. It's like, now it's like there's no woman left. It's like, then you have to increase your value to be valuable to the people who you value, or you change your standards. Like, yeah, your standards are too lofty. That's what it means, because you should still have a couple options left. Like, what's your definition of settling? I feel like people, the whole crowd that says we shouldn't applaud a fish for swimming or something like that. Like, I'm like, you should applaud people for everything, because there's people who fall off on everything.
I mean, it really also goes to speak to like who's the one shooting the shot. Like, if we are, expecting, not every woman does this, of course, but if we're expecting men to approach women, then it's like that would be kind of like the normal trend to come out of that situation. And men are still approaching women, and they have to kind of approach without the thought like, are you going to fit the standards? Are you going to make it or not? And so, of course, there's going to be some around that they're going to actually, all right, let me feel out and see what it is. But if women are, waiting for that shot to be shot at them and they still have that standard, then it gets a little bit more complicated. But I would love to hear a woman's perspective on that.
Well, I definitely think that the reason if women settle, then the traffic stops is because, to me, women are pickier when it comes to what they look for. They aren't willing to, I feel like they think settling means, to me, settling is when you completely just give up everything you look for in a person. And then you're just like, all right, well, I guess I'll deal with this person because there's nobody left. But to me, I feel like a lot of women, you're missing one quality and then they think it's settling. And in dating, you are not going to find 100% of what you want in a person. You should try to find the majority of the qualities that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to have everything that you want at all. And a lot of women think, a lot of women, in my perspective, think that settling just means like, oh, well, he doesn't do this one thing, so I can't date him.
All right.
And honestly, I do think men have a little more traffic when they settle because they don't have higher standards like women do. To me, y'all don't have many expectations when it comes to the women y'all date the way that women have expectations when it comes to the men they date.
I want to see. I wouldn't even argue that. See, what I think of it is more so men have a more negative view of themselves, not necessarily to the point that you just don't believe in yourself, you have no confidence, but when gauging a dating partner, I'm truly looking like, all right, so I'm pretty impatient, so I can only be as critical of a woman for being this amount of impatient. I'm not going to really trip on any woman who's equal or below, you know what I'm saying, equal or better than me in these regards. I look about this well. I see dudes that's taller, build a little bit better, got a little more money, more hairline, whatever. So let's say about this amount of women are out of my league, just like this amount of men are that much flyer than me. Like, okay, I'm about this intelligence. I think in general, there's a theory like a Cinderella tale. Like, no matter where you are as a woman, like all you do is just live. And somebody comes, I'm like, this theory is what yields like an entitlement to a partner, where I think I'm like, you shouldn't have that idea. Like, where is this theory coming from? Like, is there just some island of women who just have all rich husbands that you're like, oh yeah, that's what is your standard being compared to? Because I see a lot of women is like, yo, you know, it's kind of tough out here. It's not all the why are you so confident? It's like, you know, it's just like finding a job. It's like, you have to actually do a lot of steps to fall into the job. You can't just be like, I exist, and I question people. I'm just like, tell me what you, for the most part, like, I always ask a question like, what would you say is a standard by which you compare or you can judge women that's accepted? Whereas men, it's like, obvious. You're not tall, bro. Like, that's one off.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of money. Like, that's one off. How fit are you? It's one off. How much clothes? And you know what I'm saying? Like, we can really judge objectively. No one's like tripping. Like, I understand that. With women, it's like, there is no area that's like, oh, come on, bro, it's too far. I'm like, if your physical appearance is off limits, then you should have a very low, you know what I'm saying, expectation of what, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like, you can't, you just have to, it has to be even how you judge things. And that's how I look at it, kind of. But, yeah.
I heard, like, a very interesting piece of advice, though, on one of the podcasts that I listened to. It was a gentleman who said when he was single and, like, he was wanting to look for that wife, he said that he wrote down everything that he would want in, you know, his woman, and, you know, down to the qualities and how she looked. And then he thought to himself, like, okay, what kind of man would it take to get this woman? And so from there, that's where he started to, you know, build on himself. And I guess he just kind of stumbled upon a woman, and it kind of worked out for him, and that she fit the qualities that he asked for. So I think that kind of just speaks to, like, putting in the work to build yourself to attract who you think you might want. You know what I'm saying?
I 100% agree, because I'm like, the way I look at it is that just existing, you may get a couple options to date or have, like, intercourse with, but to everything that you do adds how many options you get. So if you get a good job, you've increased your options maybe 20%. If you work out, you're able to stay physically fit as the rest of everybody gets older and fatter, then you increase a little 15-20%. If you develop a little talk game, you're kind of a funny, interesting person, it develops a little. So I think of it as, if you're actively thinking that way, and you're judging yourself, you're critical of yourself. Like, I see a lot of women who are funnier than me. Like, or in general, I make friends with women poorly, so maybe my social skills is like a little off. If you had these type of judgments, you would be more, I guess, understanding or cut dudes slack, and you would then be able to accurately get. Like, I just sometimes feel like with men, I think the difference is that you will not even get. You will kind of develop an idea of where you rank by the amount of partners you can find, and it will tell you, oh, you're right, you're really that guy, or nah, you're not that guy. Like, depending on how many girls are like, yeah, I'm cool with it, let's go, let's get it. But with women, you can get invited or you can get attention from men who don't necessarily care. So you may have an inflated sense of like, this is where I'm at, or you know what I'm saying. It's harder to gauge like what is really your ballpark of where this is a pretty good guy for you. Like, and I think that's what it is. You know, it works against them, it works for us. Like, so many rejections is able to give me like, okay, I really appreciate that you're here, really appreciate that, and I can overlook these things. But so many acceptances from women, maybe not even with no work. You ain't have to put no date, you ain't have to, put no effort. He DM'd you, he sponsored everything, you know what I'm saying? So it's like all that acceptance may give you an inflated sense of value. You haven't really judged like, okay, well, I'm kind of a mean girl. Like, 4 days out the week I have a little bit of attitude. Like, this is something you don't have to work on it because dudes always DM me, you know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes it's the privilege of like shining for so long with no work, no effort for women sometimes can give them they don't understand that. But to sign the deal, to really cuff, that's when men start becoming doctors and they start becoming philosophical. Like, I don't know if she can please my inner desires for self-actualization. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's a layer to it.
To kick it with you, they'll be like, oh, she look bad. But lots of men become very deep and when it becomes a long-term commitment. Whereas women, I think they're almost damn the opposite. It's like, yes, I'm picky on who I like, but you know what I'm saying, once I choose you, it's like, you know what I'm saying, I would prefer commitment. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always going to.
She seems like she got something to say about that.
I think it usually is like that. Like, it's the opposite way that we look at it in that regard.
I think it's that way because women often have expectations that they can't even really fulfill. So they end up in that place, in their lane where they should be. Like, I feel like it's harder for them to, when they do settle, and like it's harder for them to, I guess, they don't bring to the table what they ask for. And like, they don't have what they want men to have. And that's why it's hard for them when they settle. Because you're not really settling, but you're in the same lane as the men that you don't really like.
Right.
So like you said earlier, it's all about like how you said men, they kind of work towards to get to that group where they do have those women that they're actually interested in, where they're on their level, and I don't think women do that
right
at all.
So I thought of this question, and I wanted to ask you both: out of men or women, who do you think settles more, like, in life?
That's a really tough question.
It is.
It's a really tough question. Because I don't feel like, I don't know, I feel like men, to me, y'all's standards aren't, men I've talked to, like, y'all don't have, like, the highest of standards for women. Like, the men I've had conversations with. So, essentially, I would feel like y'all do settle more because y'all aren't really expecting a whole lot. And I feel like women aren't that's just my opinion. I don't feel like y'all are expecting a whole lot. So like y'all are settling. Like, y'all should have way higher standards than y'all do. And I don't feel like women really settle more. To them, they're settling because they're not getting everything they want. But him not having 4 of the 20 qualities that you're looking for, to me, that's not actually settling. So I definitely think that y'all settle more because y'all don't ask for more.
I think that women settle more, not because that they intend to, but because they wait out the clock of their highest peak, flyness, and that's contrary. I know people like they don't like to hear that, but realistically, I would say for most women, it's like a certain age group where you at your prettiest, you at your most freest of time, least stress levels, heart hasn't been broken 25 times yet. Like you're at a peak period to like find your best flyest dude that you could have got. And at that moment, you should have like you get a little bit of fun at the beginning, and you start picking like all right, this where I'm about at. You pick a cool one and kind of invest in it. I think it's inclined to give you the better chance than what I see. Women are pushed to like have fun when you're young and then settle. And I'm like, yo, the have fun when you're young and settling down. I'm like, what they mean to tell you is that do this if you super fine, because when you get older and you super fine, you tend to be fine still. But there's a lot of women like they were never super fine. Like they was a cutie pie at their peak. You know what I'm saying? Like so when you come down, it's like now dudes who are still at the option of dating younger, their age and older. So it just seems like you're gonna have more options as a man, whereas a woman like I really don't want to date a dude younger, and I really don't want to date a dude with this amount of pocket. You know what I'm saying? Like your standards, your basic standards that you could have once accomplished at a higher rate. At this rate, you have to lower them. And it's lower than what you could have gotten at a younger age, but it's on peak to what you are at age 29, 33, etc., etc. So it's going to be considered settling because at age 23, you was a fine little tenderoni. Like, you really should have got a fly dude. You just played a little too much in the game. Like, you didn't know when to retire. Whereas I think dudes, you have to hunt no matter what the age is. You have to go get it. So whatever you develop or whatever ends up being your peak is it's either what you developed, your skills, how well you really could have done, your peak because you were out there trying, or your fear level or your fear of rejection or fear of change, etc., gives you about where you could get or how much you could afford to. Like if you're a dude who's scared of rejection, you couldn't date or mess with these type of girls because they're going to reject you, maybe even give you a little initial rejection before they even allow entry to their lives. So you couldn't do that anyway. You kind of know, okay, or I'm super jealous, so I know I couldn't mess with this girl who attracts so much attention, or I'm kind of broke, or you know what I'm saying, whatever your little thing. So even if it may seem like, man, you seem like you could got better, really can't. Like your personality yields you this woman, like unless she came and hollered at you, which is for a small minority of men, I would say. But for women, like you really know, like there was a lot of people who knocked on the door, like you could see the list, like it was this dude, this dude. You didn't know when it was time to be like him. You were like playing it like you're thinking it's linear, like at age 28. You know what I'm saying? You still want the same dudes. I'm like, I'm a little critical of that theory. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's the biggest thing I be saying. They think I'm like sexist. I'm like, nah, it's not as easy as y'all. Like, you getting a lot of money as a woman. It's not like dudes saying, yo, she a CEO. Like, they just seeing you like, she doesn't look good. You know what I'm saying? Or she's kind of mean. Like, whatever. It would take a couple of dates before they knew, like, oh, she's a CEO. Like, she has a lot of money. Like, dudes don't look at you like, hey, cuff links, or look at the bottom, red bottom. Like, it's not the thing. But men can get money or get better options just off getting money. You know what I'm saying? Whereas women are like, yeah, you kind of got to be nice. You need to probably wear that perfume. You need to, or you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to try to put that net out there at an earlier time. I don't know. That's my theory.
So my theory is going to be like a sprinkle of both of what you both just said. And I feel like, so how she said men don't really have the standards. I feel like men's standards for who they can kick it with is very low. And then when it's cuffing time, they try to introduce those standards. And then that's where it's like always that conflict. Like men can kick it with a wide array of women. And then so there's two conflicts that comes. Like there's a conflict of other women seeing who you can kick it with, and you're like, you don't have no standards. But then it's like, okay, when it's like, all right, she wants to go to that next level, then he starts pulling out standards out of nowhere, and it kind of becomes a conflict because she was like, if I was good enough for you to kick it with me, now when it's time to cuff, it's like you got new things that you caring about. And so I feel like on the reverse, women typically, from what I've seen, their standards are coming from like, okay, to even let you in my life, it is a standard. You know what I'm saying? And then once you've like snuck in past that standard, then you kind of like, all right, it's a go if you keep checking those boxes. So like, that's where I kind of saw that.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I don't understand why it's a complicated, like where the difference is between our genders on that. because it seems rather. I think some women think the same way, and I think some men think the opposite. But it's like if I'm hanging with you, all I need for to hang with you is to feel safe and to have a general sense of enjoyment. But there is no lofty standard. I don't need you to be super smart. You know what I'm saying? I don't need you to be super caring. I just need you to be kind of funny. You know what I'm saying? Cool in the moment. So I don't have the standard of what I would have if I was like, yeah, this is what I should pursue. And you may not even be exhibiting, like, I don't see how you think you could exhibit it and just chilling with me. Like, it has to be more than that. Whereas I see a woman that's like, just like what Devontae says, like, it's a slim picking of who could even hang, who could be in your presence, which is interesting, which is funny. You know what I'm saying? But I get it. But when you do get that, I don't understand why there still isn't a separation between, like, just because you hang out with someone doesn't mean necessarily that guy is of quality to get there. You know what I'm saying? And I find that interesting that I see just what he observed. Like, a lot of women do have that. I'm like, why? This guy doesn't even, like, he doesn't even give, I'm going to be your father or your family one day. Bye. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just interesting. Like, I would just, to see him as a fun jokester guy, I'm surprised you took it to that level. But, you know, that's your theory on that.
I definitely feel like with women, we're picky about who we want in our space, as we should be. Because I don't like to just kick it with just anybody. I like to know people's intentions. I'm a relationship girl. So I'm not gonna say every guy that I've talked to in the past, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get to a relationship with him. But I also don't want to waste my time. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm very picky about who I choose to have in my space, where we go, and things like that. Where with men, I feel like you said, like, y'all just kick it with anybody. And then later on, y'all kind of bring those standards to the table.
Right.
And like he was saying, there's that conflict. And I kind of always feel like once you do decide to take it to the next step, there should be more standards from both people.
Right.
Like, you should expect more of the person that you about to take it to the next level with. Like, it shouldn't still be the same standards as when we was kicking it in a room watching Netflix. Like, both people should want more from the other, and both people should expect the other person to want more from them. And that kind of goes back to earlier when I was saying people just like to take, and they don't like to, get brought standards to.
Yeah, they don't want anything expected of them. It's like,
yeah, they can have the expectations.
And a lot of times, I think it's the music. Just like I think we were talking about before the show. It's like a, you know what I'm saying, sugar baby type era of, you know what I'm saying, of what the expectation is gonna be like. Oh, I'm just coming to reap. I'm like, that's not even. It doesn't. To me, it's a strong conflict with the like push of like female empowerment of like, oh, we control everything. I'm like, it's just it goes against it. It's a funny thing because it reveals that even though you may say these things, you desire what is typically kind of a traditional idea of what people think you desire. Like,
yeah,
I think I just want, I want bread, I want diamonds, I want, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, that's what everybody thought. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, wait, what was he fighting for? That was people was giving you that. Like,
yeah.
So it's like, it's funny to me that people try to put you like, oh yeah, that's what's empowering. You know what I'm saying? But
I feel like we've always wanted that, but we're just more upfront about it now. Like,
okay.
I definitely think women are more vocal about getting what they want and getting what they feel like they deserve. I don't think it was always like that with dating. I feel like for the longest time, men kind of called the shots, and like sometimes women would just take what they can get, and now they're like, no, like, I want you to pay my bills, I want you to take care of me and do this and that. And we get looked at negatively for finally being vocal about what has kind of been the standard the whole time. So
I think you get looked at negatively for being vocal about what you want, which has been the standard the whole time, but wanting to change what you want to do, which is a completely. Basically, it's like, it's not crazy that you want rich dudes. It is kind of crazy you want rich dudes, but you don't want to do what rich dudes wanted their wives to do back then. Yeah. So it's not crazy that you want this and that. It's just what got adjusted on your list of roles and responsibilities. And I think that's it. Dudes always try to say that, hey, so what y'all doing? Like, what's the? Yeah. And they like, you just want us to, like, it's just minimized when I'm like, yeah, it actually has logical merit. Like, what changes in your roles or what is expected of you? Like, we assume that, oh, you want more power, more say so. You want to do more. You want to give more. Not, I want to talk. I want to trip. You know what I'm saying? I want to say my peace of mind, but I ain't helping when it's time to push. It's like, yo, that's what men are like. That's what we don't want. You know, and I think also there's a conflict between what happens in real life and what's really in real life. Women they adjusted. They either are actually traditional and they pick men who gonna handle everything, and they're I'm a cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't tripping on cleaning anyway. I don't really have a problem with that. Or they're mixed. Like I'm gonna get bread, but I have a lot of more say, and I have a little bit of a problem with this, and I want to go here, and we're gonna do this. Like you do, and I think a lot of dudes like, I'm with that, but you handle this bill. Like I'm not tripping on it. It's only when you don't help in one area, but you're expecting a lot of people like trip. But I want to get to this, saying something that you say a lot on Twitter. I want you to explain your opinion on women and accountability.
Okay. The girls are not gonna like this.
I like this already.
Yeah, that's what
I'm gonna start off by I'm gonna start off by saying men take zero accountability as well. So I'm gonna dip that in the
-4.
That's not so cool.
But I definitely feel like women take no accountability. Like, it was one specific
this is the only
thing.
part we're gonna put on it. On the teasers, and like, women take no accountability.
They
like, just
don't.
for it's on. Everybody gonna be like, this. Did they pay you a cookie? Like, are you happy?
No. My whole thing. It was one particular day where a man was like, dating in Atlanta for a man is hard. And
I saw that.
all Twitter women were like, "Oh, you just can't afford us. You're broke.
Lord.
Your pockets are empty." Like, without realizing that women are difficult as hell to date. Like, I'm a woman. I know I put my man through a lot. Like, I'm not easy to date. And it's not necessarily like, everybody has their flaws, but I feel like women don't look at theirs. They just, I don't know if they expect men to just put up with it, or they literally don't, they have no self-awareness when it comes to the negativity they bring to dating. But they don't take accountability for it, because they sat there and called, they don't know what that man's occupation was.
Just disrespect.
They just completely called him broke. And I'm like, y'all are the same women who didn't have $350 last week, but wanted a man to pay $700 for a trip. And like, that's my whole thing. Like, there's just no accountability within the group of women. Like, and women also don't hold other women accountable. Like, anything is accepted nowadays. Anything is okay as long as you're a woman. It's feminism, women power.
Right.
All these men can go to hell. Like, that's just what it is. And I just, like, we have to, in order for men to hold themselves accountable, which y'all need to. Look at you. Is in order for men to hold themselves accountable, like, we all have to do that. And we have to hold each other accountable as well.
To add to that, I feel like I respect women who have something for themselves and they expect that from another man. But if you don't have it, that's where, like, when you say if you only had $350 in your account, you know what I'm saying, maybe you shouldn't be the one to comment on that. And I feel like it's not a fair enough amount of that going on. So, that's my critique on the whole new era of women expecting, dudes to have a bag. If you got your bag too, then you can definitely expect that. But if you're not working on your bag, then I don't think you should be the one to comment on that.
Absolutely.
150% agree. I've
been waiting on this.
The reason I say accountability, the biggest thing I feel is though people don't understand that your ability to maintain self, like, for a woman, is going to be what is held equivalent to a man's ability to provide and bring, like, money home and stuff like that. So when I would never make such critical, hard lines or standards of how much you need your man to make if you, like, nervous to say you can't hold off 25 pounds. If you like, after the baby, like, well, he gonna have to love me no matter what. I'm like, whoa, that. Would you say to him, like, he gonna have to, you know what I'm saying, like, if he's like, she gonna love me no matter what, if I'm jobless or not, like, she's gonna have to be there and ride for me. Well, I would say that those are things that are held, like whenever you hold a hard standard, you have to be accountable for the standard on which you're judged by that person because you place something on them. So I'm saying that's just the simplest thing to me, and that's something that you hold in control. Not even going on to things that are more, I guess, dynamic, such as you might go through a mental depression and your partner goes through mental depression, and like you have to be accountable for it. Maybe you treat them wrong in your little mental lows or emotional lows. You have to be accountable for that. It's not just always such a black and white simple story as to why one person, like you have to be accountable for. I was kind of, I wasn't being as kind, or I wasn't being respectful. So during the relationship, I do have to hold my low, and I just feel in every area. I rarely run into dudes who don't even jokingly mention like, yeah, I was wild and like that was kind of crazy. I shouldn't have been doing this. Like, but I always run into women who really truly feel like we was holding it down. Like I was straight, I was solid. Like I really don't know what was wrong. And I'm like, every time, like no mistakes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's they would take it as proof that dudes are always messing up. I take it as proof. I'm like, you're just not being accountable. Like it's unrealistic. Even the fall offs with female friend groups suggest that you have personality issues that put you at odds with others. Like you can't be a perfect angel all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like there should be something that you're like, yeah, I'm messing up in that area. That was my fault, and I feel like we have to strive to improve that on the female side. Ladies, we need that.
It's that pride.
Get accountable. Like they're gonna record that and be like, I can't believe he said this shit.
But while we were talking about accountability, I also want men out there to hold themselves accountable and connect with the moral code. Like I feel like certain men, when they're not identifying with their religion, then their moral code kind of gets out of whack. And I would like for us to be able to independently have a moral code that's honorable and solid, and we sticking to it and holding our other male counterparts accountable for it as well. And so, like, just how we want women to be accountable, I also, want men to take that pledge and be accountable. There's some crazy ass men out here, and we got to understand the female experience and do what we can to improve that, whatever they're going through.
That was actually a conversation I had with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and how, like, when it comes to the things that women go through from men, men have to be there to be a support system for women. Like, as much as we don't want to admit it, we can't do without y'all. And it's very similar to like the racial movements. Like we can't make racial strides without white people's voice. Right. We can't.
I agree with those two statements.
We don't want them necessarily involved because of everything that's going on. But at the end of the day, like they're very crucial to the movement. And men are very crucial when it comes to making sure women are straight.
Right. And I think that's a mature statement to say. I have the biggest problem with people, mainly when they were speaking to regards of the family, the black family, like that we don't need the father role, or like there's like so much criticism about absentee fathers, which is true. Like there's something that we definitely improve on, but also there's like a willingness to evade the fact that also who are the people that are taking care or raising up the men that you think are problematic. You either have to accept that, you know what I'm saying, like men do play a focal role and their absence affects things, or you have to say, hey, when we raise them, sometimes they end up kind of crazy too. Like, you know what I'm saying, like that we have a problem that has to be faced on both sides, and we have to be willing to say that. But on a men accountability issue, I have to piggyback what Vontae said. Like, I agree so hard with that. There has to be men that look at their life, and before they say other things or external things are wrong, you have to look within. Like, okay, these are the things I have to fix to get my life in a position where I can even speak or help other movements. And I think too much, like in this time period we're in, my age group at least, is getting like caught into, well, this privilege is this, or this system is, okay, causing a situation that I can't. I'm like, first you need to make sure everything is together, because if you come and you criticize any large situation, any large movement, or any large group of people, they're going to come at your personal. Like, are you handling your bills? Are you staying fit mentally and physically? Is your spirit in alignment? He said, when he said that a lot of men are not religious anymore, so they need a moral code. I believe that that's a big part of how we help the situation is establishing one. And in establishing one, we have to be able to establish there's certain behaviors that are negative. You said you shouldn't come in high every time to work or something like that, or maybe you have to understand that I can't. It's important to try to establish a relationship with the father or the mother of my children, and maintain and try to be a family, or be more sexually selective to make sure that I get the right partner for my family. That's so critical into mending our home situation, because if you have a mom and dad, kids are more likely to do better in life in many statistical categories. So I think a big part of that is just not being scared to say that's wrong. And so many times, like, I feel like there's so many things people are like, well, you gotta understand, bro, like, they came from somewhere else. I'm like,
that's how I was raised.
I'm like, yeah.
Like, we almost 30, and you still talking about how you was raised.
Right, I'm like, I get it, but how we finna change it? Like, we can't change the rules to be like, all right, if you started out in a bad situation, your rules is better. Like, you ain't gonna get that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need the same level of expectation. I'm like, it should only be more challenging for you, but it can't be like there is no expectation for you. And I feel like we get caught in that. That's a thing that's in our culture. Like, don't judge the way. Like, we had a Twitter moment one time. It was like, these scammers ain't doing nothing with the money they get. They're not investing it, just buying like Balenciagas and vibes.
Yeah.
And someone quoted it and they said, y'all gotta stop judging what people do with their money. And I'm like, nah, we need to start judging what people do with their money. Like, that's not that. If you're gonna go bad, like, you can't be like, let them live. Like, a little part of it has to be like, actually try to use your funds for a better purpose. If you're gonna do it, like, you shouldn't do it the wrong way, scamming already. I wouldn't encourage anybody to do it, but it's just we gotta have some type of moral code to keep things in order.
I think that's like what that person is saying. They really want natural selection to happen, and for those who just ain't got it to just fall off, and it's not looking at like, okay, we're trying to save our community instead of letting them fall off just because, you know, it's natural selection. But, you know, I think if we all want change, then we all have to be holding each other accountable. And I also wanted to spread some light on something that I had recently seen. It was like a group of like 19 families. They bought some property out in like South Georgia, and they're gonna name it Freedom, Georgia, and they want it to be, you know, black owned, black ran, and everything like that. And like, I think that's a beautiful movement going on, and I just wanted to shed some light on it while we were speaking about, you know, financial accountability and everything. But, you know, big shouts out to them, because that's major, and I'm excited to see where that goes for, you know, the future of us as a community.
Right. I'm glad you did a good positive thing over here. I was going in a whole different direction.
Yeah, fuck these niggas.
These niggas don't get it, bro. The one thing y'all need to understand is these niggas don't get it, bro. they never gonna learn, bro. Like,
but overall, yeah, haven't you seen like a major improvement as far as, you know, the topic of wealth coming in for the black Twitter and black community? I feel like even though we still have some far out extremes going the other direction, I think we're almost in the black renaissance, and I love to see it. And everybody's kind of working to be financially free in some type of way, or, you know, they grinding in their fields, and I feel like we're achieving more than ever. But back to the topic, we can't stop holding people accountable because of that, though.
right. No, we've definitely been doing better statistically. I feel like you can get into the culture of, like, we're in such a everything is privileged, this is unfair, like, vibe or era right now that I feel. I believe that what people don't understand is that you are striving to become better, so that ultimately your descendants or people around you get unfair privilege. That's what you want to do. Like, when your kids are wealthy because off no work or no merit from their own, they have a privilege. If your friends have a way into a job that they don't really know or have the experience for, they have privilege. So everything is going to yield to an extent that type of privilege. So I was like, while we're doing good, our focus needs to be on reforming, you know, things within and then we can attack external issues.
Mm-hmm.
But when you focus so much on, I mean, like, we have silly stuff where it's like light-skinned girls can't say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, remember I said the colorism issue? I'm like, that's such a bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, what's your opinion? I'm like, I just said, I'm like, when you believe everything is privilege to the point where you're not focusing on bigger issues, like there's a little rift within our race because of that issue. We can't even focus on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what are you about to say? I don't know. She's about to be like,
well, no, because I know you're one of those people who think that light-skinned people can experience colorism. And I don't. I don't. I don't agree with that.
Why?
Because they're not in the position to be oppressed at all. Like, you consider light-skinned people experiencing colorism like, oh, they called him soft, or they said she's acting bougie. Like, those aren't real struggles. Like, those are things. Those are jokes most of the time.
Right.
Like, oh, that nigga soft. Like, she acting light-skinned. Like, those aren't real things. Like, we in the real world, y'all still get light-skinned people still get preferred with jobs. It's easier for them. Dark-skinned people are seen as aggressive, like monkeys, like stuff like, you don't ever hear no light-skinned person getting called a monkey by somebody racist.
Okay.
So they're not in the position to be oppressed. So I don't think that they can experience actual colorism.
And this is another thing, because I think this stems to the same issue I have with other issues. If you are defining it as first oppression, then you have an idea of like, if it's not something that can be represented in numerical values, then it's not valid. And that to me is like very limiting, and it doesn't really quite capture their situation. You may say, hey, it's a small joke that is kind of like, but I would argue, I'm saying the same joke repeated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in your lifespan is effective enough to give you a little bit of tension, a little bit of something that does not necessarily need to be there. But I'm saying I don't know if it can ever be changed. It'll only be someone else takes an L in some area. For example, there is no real reason that tall people have a perk, because we don't need that anymore. We have like modern community, like we don't need a taller guy. Like, it doesn't matter. We can't change the fact that little dudes is getting jokes forever.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, if it was actual tension between short men and tall men, like we really like short dudes is kind of like, man, I don't really want to hear what you got to say. You know what I'm saying? Because you not really suffering like I'm suffering. It becomes y'all have y'all struggling. Like, well, I got this amount of. Well, you're more inclined to get a job. It's like, it's something they can't control. To me, it's so. What I argue it is more so, colorism is a tension, like a disrespectful thing that both sides are getting. Now, if you're going to argue that one side is less likely to get jobs, you can win in that area. If you're going to argue that one side is less likely to be in a music video, you can win in that area. But if you're saying what side, that both sides don't suffer a significant amount of emotional trauma, which I would say is the root argument which you suffer from, because you can still be a dark skin people successful. It's clearly not enough to bar you. It's just enough to hurt you. And I'm like, it's enough to hurt light skin people. It's enough to sting, to cause if you're in the song, I'm like, you ain't even black. That joke is actually very common. Yeah. To get that joke many times, it'd be, you know what I'm saying? It's just like when I say, I don't know your experience, y'all experience growing up. You're an intelligent person, intelligent kid, you're getting joked on for being smart. It's not necessarily you have a weakness. You have something that'll give you better jobs, something that make teachers like you more, but you do gonna get this joke, and this joke traumatizes some kids. Some kids start to dumb, they refuse to do well in school, some of them don't do well in social situations just off these jokes. So I'm saying we could say that in many different categories, that you would say, yeah, I can see how that just like rich people get hated on just for being rich, like they have attention, like that's what I'm saying. I don't discount the pain of the people at the top who get hated by a majority, whereas I don't also discount the pain of the people at the bottom who are hated with more supporters, but they may feel like their hate is more stifling from getting up. I think both of them are suffering some type of pain.
I definitely think that light-skinned people suffer a different type of pain when it comes to, I guess, being shut out of their community. Like, you're less black when you're light-skinned. Like, you can either grow up with your black parent, but because you have some white in you, you're not fully black to a lot of black people. But I wouldn't call that colorism, because, like, that doesn't always negatively affect them in society. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that, me thinking that that person is less black because they're light skinned in society, that won't really matter, because they're going to be seen as not dark skinned by the majority of people. So I wouldn't really call it colorism. I'll give it a little bit of prejudice, how dark skinned people are towards light skinned people. I'll say it's a little prejudice, but I wouldn't use colorism as a term.
And I even said that's based off of an assumption, and I think a lot of people have this too, that the light skinned people live in an environment frequented by other races. If that was the case, then they could really feel the power of these privileges that you guys are speaking on. But let's assume it's a black person that's in a city full of black people,
Mm-hmm.
and you get your little jokes from your race, but you don't work from the white people. You don't kick it with the white people. You don't get these privileges. It's just the jokes.
Yeah.
You get the love of also being attractive, but I would say that what comes to dark skin is a feeling of strength, and I would say it's a protective cloak as well.
Yeah.
Whereas I think people don't want to say, if you're considered more masculine because you're dark skin, you're also tried less. If you're just you and a light skin girl, y'all just walk in. Who gets the joke? Who gets the? Let's try the other one. And that is that's a privilege for a man. I know for me, I've had experiences where, you know what I'm saying, it's you and just a guy who looks less imposing.
Mm-hmm.
Just a height difference. They're gonna more inclined to try him.
Yeah.
Well, for darker men, you're considered strong. You consider you don't have to battle to, like, that to me, like, these are, if we're going to speak on the negatives of COVID, you have to know that there's certain perks of being accepted. Like, nobody ever tried, like, oh, you black. No one's ever trying your black card unless you say something wild, like, I hate black people. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, I think there's perks that come with it, so.
I still do think they get tried. Like, you'll be in a setting and it's like the darkest, person in the group, like, yo, black ass. Like, that's like when everybody's noticeably lighter. Like, to me, they still get tried in a sense. Like, yeah, they're seen more masculine, but at the same time, they still do get that they're at a disadvantage already because of their skin color. You ain't never been in a room of lighter people and it's that one dark ass person, like, shut your dark ass up, like, shut your black ass up.
I've heard it, but it's just how I interpret it. Like, I just think everybody's getting L's, and that the person who has the most L's, it's always gonna feel like it's them. I'm like, they're gonna enter a different room with other people with more L's. There's a person who's the brokest in the room, person who's the dumbest in the room, person who's the fattest in the room, person who has the less options of the dating market in the room, and they all like looking at each other like just insecure. Like, it doesn't mean that we say that this one group, your L, respect that more, or this one right here, it deserves more. I'm like, if you look at it like that, it feels that way, but in reality, what would be the behavior or mindset you must achieve to best deal with the issue? It couldn't be that we say that light people can't feel this pain or that they're less black. Otherwise, it just keeps a little riffraff. It would have to be, hey, you beautiful, y'all gonna have jokes, you gotta eat it, the strongest of the strongest, the strongest of the strongest survive. Like,
Yeah.
I always think of what is the long term, like, whatever mindset we adopt, what is the long term effect of thinking that way or moving that way or whatever it may be. Okay.
Well, I think that was a very interesting discussion, and I like that we went back to certain topics and kind of grabbed the female opinion on those and just a different perspective. And yeah, that's what we all about, is just widening our scope of life and understanding on everything that we're going through and that we're experiencing in society. And I really appreciate you coming on and bringing your opinion. Our first female guest, and it was definitely an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
R.I.P. to Kenzie, he's here. You want to make an appearance on the camera?
No, I don't.
Hey, money over everything.
Right.
Anything else you want to say, Captain?
No, just make sure you guys follow us at Perspective Junkies podcast on the Apple podcast app. You can follow us on Perspective Jun1 on Twitter, Perspective Junkies Podcast on Instagram. So follow us, subscribe, like, 5-star us. Appreciate you for tuning in.
All right. Peace, love, and happiness. Peace.
We're out.
Bye.